Today I fucked up by not preparing for a tattoo. I had a very large tattoo planned for today, and I thought maybe I could do it all in one session. Usually for a tattoo, you should eat and drink plenty before going, as it's quite hard on the body. Also, it's best to have plenty of sleep before. I didn't do that. After a late night at a party, I woke up on 4 hours of sleep and could get back to bed. Because I'm on a diet, I only had a light breakfast and made my way to the tattoo parlor. So I started the day pretty low on energy. Sitting waiting for the artist to set up, I realized that I was feeling quite tired, but only in a sleepy way rather than an exhausted way, so I figured I'd be fine just lying on my side for a few hours while the tattoo got done. A few hours later, having not finished the entire piece, I left the parlor in pretty good shape, wandered around the city waiting to catch my train back home, visited a pharmacy, grabbed a coffee. But as I waited in the train station an hour later, I started to feel lightheaded and rested against a wall for a few minutes. As the time to go the platform approached, I got up, started walking, and promptly fainted. I woke up in a pool of blood with my head dashed against the tiles of the station, surrounded by onlookers and a few helpful people. They called the ambulance, I went to the nearest emergency room, and after 13 stitches in my eyebrows, I'm left with a hell of a scar and a headache. I'm lucky I didn't get a concussion. I got home about 5 hours after finishing my tattoo, with pain in places I expected and some I didn't. Now I need to get the stitches taken out, and I'll complete the tattoo in few weeks. TLDR fainted after a tattoo because I was low on food and sleep. Ended up in ER. Today I fucked up by giving my 21M 8-year older sister a haircut while my parents went on vacation. Mandatory didn't happen today. It actually happened 1 year ago today. Last year, my 21 parents wanted to take a trip around Europe for a week, and I was left to babysit my 8-year-old sister, Shayla, and my 17-year sister, Lisa. My older sister, 33F, was with us for the first 2 days, and then I was alone with Shayla and Lisa for the next 6 days. I was like a bad parent, because I really just let Shayla do whatever she wanted, and we went wild. I took her to an amusement park, let her stay up way past her bedtime, skip 1 day of school, eat too many snacks. It wasn't anything detrimental, I just brought her rebellious side out. Then Lisa cut her hair at home and got those fringe hairstyles IDK haircut terminology. It looked really cool, and Shayla was obsessed with it and wanted to do it too. I thought, fuck it. So I let Lisa cut Shayla's hair and give her a fringe. It went south, and halfway through, Lisa handed me the scissors saying she's messing it up. Again, I thought, FCK it. I've cut hair in lockdown and decided to finish the haircut. I messed it up more. At the time, Lisa and I were laughing because it was starting to look really bad. We were horrible, horrible siblings for that, and I completely acknowledge it. At one point, Lisa was laughing hysterically because I made an Edna joke, and Shayla got off the chair to look in the mirror. I thought she'd be upset, but didn't realize how badly this would affect her. Tears started trickling down her face, and with her voice breaking, she said under her breath, "I look so ugly." Her saying that was one of those glass-shattering moments for me. I instantly realized how big of a FCK I did. Up until then, I didn't even consider how this would ruin her confidence. I didn't even know that kids had self-esteem, if that makes any sense. It's such a basic thing, everyone has it, but I didn't even care to think about hers. I hugged her, tried consoling her, but she was crying a lot. I tried thinking on my feet, and I told her I actually had a surprise for her. This was a prank, and I'd booked an appointment at an expensive hairdresser's who'd give her the best haircut ever. Under her vast amount of tears, there was some curiosity, and after a couple minutes, she started smiling gleefully, thinking this was all supposed to happen. She put on a cap, and we got on the train to go towards the central part of the city. On the way, I searched for the hairdressers with the highest ratings and accepted walk-ins. I told the hairdresser what happened on the side and to fix her hair somehow. About 2 hours later, her haircut was done, and the hairdresser did an incredible job. She did all kinds of things, gave her a fringe and slightly dyed the tips, edek what the rest of the stuff was, but it looked amazing. Shayla was really happy, and I got her ice cream, then took her home. The haircut cost me half my savings too, but it was worth it, and I was really grateful to the hairdresser. That night, I cried a lot in the shower because I felt like the worst person in the world. That day taught me a very valuable lesson, and I'm never in my life going to play around with a kid's confidence for shits and giggles. I did an insensitive, stupid thing, and I still feel a pit in my stomach when I replay her saying, "I look so ugly." Never again. TLDR cut my little sister's hair when my parents went away, but it turned out horrible. Today I fucked up by accidentally terrifying my fiancée twice in one night. This happened around 6 months ago. My fiancée 29F and I 28M had just signed a contract for a new apartment. We had been dreaming of moving to a bigger place for a very long time, so this was a huge deal for us. Apartment search process leading up to this had been extremely stressful for me, as getting an apartment in our city is infamously hard. When we came home that night, we decided to celebrate with a couple of alcoholic drinks. Around 10 p.m., I noticed that I had a scratchy throat, and I knew I could not afford to be sick during our move in a couple days. Due to stress and exhaustion, I completely failed to mentally connect the dots that I had just had alcohol and took ibuprofen. We went to bed late and I fell asleep almost immediately. I had a dream that something very unpleasant was happening to me. I don't remember what it was specifically, but it felt disturbing. The feeling of nausea very slowly pushed me out of deep sleep, and at some point I became awake and aware that it wasn't only in my dream. I felt like I was going to throw up. Still drowsy, I sat up on the bed. Slowly I started to become aware of what was happening to me. Alcohol and ibuprofen both have blood-thinning effects, and when I am generally very stressed, I get nosebleeds for some weird reason. Put all of these factors together, and get this, I got a strong nosebleed in my sleep. Because I was sleeping on my back, the blood had been flowing to the back of my throat, and as a reflex in my sleep, I had been swallowing it for hell knows for how long. For context, I have a weird relationship with blood. Talking about it, seeing it on the screen, or even in real life has no effect on me most of the time. But reading about it, or thinking about it under very specific circumstances can knock me out surprisingly quickly. So I am sitting there on the bed, realizing that I'd been chugging my own blood. The thought alone has sent my consciousness into another freaking dimension. My fiancée, I will call her H, was awake during all of that, sitting on her side of the bed, engrossed in something on her iPad. She saw me sat up, but thought I was going to the bathroom or something, and didn't pay attention to me. However, she heard me plunge headfirst to the floor. The freaking miracle was that before falling asleep, I tossed my big back pillow onto the floor next to my bed, because it was uncomfortable to sleep with, and this is where my head landed. And 2, I fell at an angle, barely missing the windowsill with my forehead. H rushed to my side and saw me lying on the floor, unconscious, bleeding all over the place. I used to have epilepsy, and I fainted on H once in the past, terrifying the living hell out of her, because according to her, I stopped breathing and she thought I was dead. So in that moment, she was reliving her nightmare, thinking I was dying dead, especially with all the blood. I slowly came to, became aware of my position, of her shaking and frantic talking to the emergency line, and I knew what had just happened. She was saying things like, "He is not breathing, please hurry," etc. I was like, "H, calm down, I am alive, lol. It's nothing bad." I slowly sat up and explained the reason behind my fainting. It wasn't epilepsy. It's the usual blood fainting thing. Nothing dangerous. I will be fine. I just need to stop my nosebleed. She didn't seem to take in the words I was saying, and I understand why. She was extremely scared, and I did my best to reassure her I was fine. A few minutes later, 3 paramedics came into our small studio apartment, let in by H. They started asking a lot of questions, including if he had taken any drugs. We hadn't, and we told them so. They focused on H and kept asking her again and again if she had taken anything. For context, H is legally blind. She has extremely low vision and nystagmus that causes her eyes to move involuntarily. This is a question she gets asked a lot. But in this case, it was more than frustrating to her because she wanted them to pay attention to me. I explained everything. They were like, "Got it, get dressed." They insisted on taking me back to the hospital to run all the necessary checks, just in case. I dressed and went with them. They told H to stay home, go to sleep, and that I would come back in the morning. It was around 1 a.m. They strapped me into a seat in the back of an ambulance and started driving. They asked me to tell them the story in detail again. I was eager to do so, because I knew they'd see it wasn't an epileptic seizure or anything bad. I started telling them why happened vividly. I guess I started reliving the situation because I fainted right in front of them in that seat. I came to find them shaking me and calling my name. I must have looked like a maniac, because the first thing I did was smile, happily pointing at myself and yelling just like this. I fainted because of the blood, just like I did now. Do you believe me now? They did, lol. but they still wanted to run a few tests. Flash forward, all tests went fast, and all the results came back quickly. Everything was fine. They sent me home at around 3 a.m. I caught the night tram and went home. H didn't know I was coming back so early, and I didn't think I should call her because I knew she'd be asleep. And she was. I tried to open the door as quietly as possible, not to wake her up. But that was a mistake. When I came in and turned a small lamp on, I saw her mid-jump in the bed, grabbing for her phone, the look of utter terror distorting her face. She told me later that it was one of the worst nightmare situations for a woman to live through. She said, imagine you are a woman, sleeping alone in an apartment, and being woken up by the sound of someone trying to unlock the front door. In the middle of the night, when you are not expecting anyone. She thought she was going to be murdered, and in her desperation tried to find her phone to call the police. It took maybe 10 minutes for her heart to stop pounding. I apologized profusely for making a bad call to not tell her I was coming back earlier. Looking back, I should have predicted exactly what would happen. Safe to say, not my best night. Tale d'Air? TIFU by terrifying my fiancée twice in one night. First, I took ibuprofen after drinking, which led to a nosebleed while I slept. I unknowingly swallowed a lot of blood, fainted from the shock, and scared my fiancée into calling emergency services, thinking I was dying. Paramedics took me to the hospital, where I fainted again, mid-explanation, hilariously proving my point. After getting cleared, I returned home at 3 a.m. without warning Heronly to accidentally scare her again, when she woke up to someone unlocking the door, thinking she was about to be murdered. Today I fucked up by shitting my pants on a date meeting my girlfriend of 8 months' parents for the first time. Right after I finished dinner, I went to the bathroom to wash my hands. While I was there, I felt a fart coming and decided to let it rip. It was not a fart. Spent the next 20 minutes attempting to wash the stain off my underwear while giving my girlfriend a half-assed excuse on how I had to leave. Drove home commando with my shit-filled underwear in the trunk while was bawling my eyes off. 3 days have passed, and her family are still upset at me for leaving on such short notice. I still don't know if I should come clean or double down on my excuse and never speak on it again. I don't know who else to tell this to who wouldn't clown me forever for it. So now I'm posting here. Fuck me. TLDR, shit my pants while meeting GF's parents for the first time. Now they all hate me. Today I fucked up by recommending a song to a grieving woman. This happened yesterday, actually. At work, I was ringing up an older lady, and I said that I was surprised that the 24 O's can of beer she bought was only $0.99. She said that she had just lost her father and that she felt like she had to take a walk, which led her to the store to buy beer. I expressed my sincere condolences. I then said that what she told me reminded me of the song Drink a Beer by Luke Bryan, which is about losing a loved one, and that she may want to give it a listen. I took a walk to clear my head. This is where the walking led. Can't believe you're really gone. I further explained that in the song the walk leads the narrator to sit outside and drink beer like he used to with the person he lost. The lady said that I may make her cry because her father liked to sit outside and drink beer and began crying as she left the store. TLDR, I recommended a song to a grieving woman that I thought may help her, and instead I made her cry more about her loss because the song reminded her of her dad. Today I fucked up by opening my sex tape montage at work. My new phone has a feature enabled by default that collects any series of photos or video taken at a specific time or location and creates a slideshow from them. So a few weeks ago, I was trying to impress my date by taking her up to see the amazing views from one of the condo showrooms. Where I work, a fancy downtown apartment building where we ended up having sex. I, consensually OFC, video recorded us in the act and took a few X-rated photos of us in various sex positions. She's a cam girl, so she didn't object. Until then, the only slideshows I'd get were pictures of my cat, scenery, or food I ate at restaurants. Flash forward to a couple of weeks after the encounter. I'm at work, waiting for the elevator. 2 of them were down for maintenance, so the wait times were increasingly long, and soon enough, a crowd started forming. I took my phone out to pass the time, when suddenly I got a new story notification. I tapped it, open it, and to my horror the pictures I took that night began shuffling on my screen. The worst part is the background music alerted the people behind me before I quickly hit the shutter. I walked away incredibly embarrassed and heard giggles from the 2 girls standing behind me. I think I should quit, change my name, grow a beard, and go off-grid for a while because I don't know who else saw. This is without a doubt the most humiliating experience of my life. Told her my amateur porn randomly played at work and people saw. Today I fucked up. With a brand new circular saw. 44-yo dude, not super handy but not hopeless either. Trying to attach 2x4s to drywall for a project, so I went to Lowe's and got a jigsaw. Well, turns out $30 jigsaws aren't that good at cutting 2x4s. The blade was super hot and the wood was smoking while barely moving. So I went today and got a $70 circular saw, pulled out the directions, found the lock lever, pulled the bolt out, pushed the blade on, relocked it, good to go. Revved it up a little bit, didn't die, okay, here we go. Did a very small test cut, seemed fine, okay, now we're committed. Start actually cutting, and it gets super smoky. I'm like, probably just the sawdust, it's fine, no worse than the other jigsaw was. Finish cutting the board, and as the blade winds down, I realize it's spinning the wrong way. TLDR. Today I put a circular saw blade on backwards and cut a board with the back of the teeth. Today I fucked up, forgetting to put water in the egg pot. Meal prepping for the week. I'm on a diet and struggling to stay full, get my macro numbers, and not go over calorie budget. I fell in love with salsa eggs for breakfast. Think egg salad, but instead mix the egg with salsa and top with a dollop of sour cream. I set the eggs in the pot and was going to go back to cook them when my meds kicked in. Evidently, I had a complete brain fart and turned on the stove but forgot to add the water. An indeterminate amount of time later, I smell cooking, walk by the stove and remember I have eggs on and realize they have no water. Now I need to make 9 more eggs, but I am no millionaire. Can't post a pic, but horrible. Just think horrible. TLDR went to hard-boil eggs, forgot the water. Abomination pictured above. Today I fucked up by reaching out to an old friend. This isn't very dramatic, but it really is hurting me. I 57F had met someone who I'll call Brad, currently 58M, through a dating ad in an alternative weekly newspaper back in 1993 or so. We met at a diner where he was in walking distance, but as it was cold, I drove him home. Before he left the car, while my hand was on the stick shift, he put his hand over mine and said pointedly, "I'd like to see you again." So there was at least some interest on his part. We ended up hitting it off, but not having a romantic relationship. I would have been open to it, but I was overweight and shy and never would have made the first move. I think there were moments in our friendship where he might have been interested, but the timing wasn't right. But overall, I was more interested in him romantically than he was in me. We did have a couple of cuddling sessions, all initiated by him, so there was at least a small bit of chemistry. We were, however, very good friends. After my mom passed away, we took a road trip from where we lived to Las Vegas, Nevada. This was a 1,700-mile, 24-hour driving trip where we drove straight through switching drivers. We stayed in Vegas for several days, with a short overnight up to Bryce Canyon in Utah, where we camped out. This was the site of one of the cuddling sessions. I stayed there while he continued his road trip, and I flew home later. A few years later, when my dad was getting remarried, Brad traveled with me to the wedding, which meant dealing with a bunch of my family that he had never met, and all of the awkwardness that goes with that. At one point, I found myself pregnant with a guy who was less than supportive. I asked Brad if he would help me with birthing classes and that sort of thing, which he agreed to. I ended up terminating that pregnancy, so it never happened, but he was willing to be there. A few years later, when I got married, Brad stood up in my wedding. My betrothed was very shy and introverted and simply didn't have a big friend pool to pick from. All of this is to say that I feel like we were pretty good friends. I know that Brad always wanted to be married to someone and wanted a family of his own. There was definitely a distance between us after I got married, and I think part of it was that he always thought he'd be the one to marry before I did. Anyway, after I had a baby, we moved across the country for my husband's job, and I lost track of Brad altogether. When I found out I had breast cancer, I messaged him to let him know, but never heard anything from him. We went on with our lives and ended up moving back to the same town after 9 years. Fast forward to now, and I'm about to get divorced. I'm much more outgoing than my fiancée, Nay, so I've been trying to meet new people. I thought it would be great to reconnect with Brad, so I looked up his info and emailed him a few days ago. To my delight, he texted back and we caught up a little. He told me that he was going through some turbulence because on the one hand, his brother is not doing well physically, But on the other hand, he is interested in a woman he knows. We chatted back and forth, and I told him that I'd love to get together with him to catch up. He said no, because he didn't have the bandwidth to handle that at the moment. But we texted over the course of nearly 3 hours, exchanging photos, etc. I showed him some of my artwork, and he asked if he could make one image his screensaver. Hours after ending our conversation, he texted me to tell me about a musician he thought was really cool. So it seemed like he was wanted to at least have casual conversation, if not actually meeting up right now. An hour later, I texted him that I found out a friend had died, someone that Brad had at least met. No response. A couple evenings later, I texted him with an inside joke of ours, a funny phrase that his name anagrams to. So totally light-hearted. The next morning I get this text, "I'm sorry, but I don't think you're hearing me. I don't have any deeply personal context for how to respond to you now. I like you, but we are not close. The good old days were in fact not good for me, and all my work and growth since is under current threat and requires my full attention. I haven't responded since. I'm flawed because I feel that even though we haven't talked in a long time, we certainly were close 30 years ago. I mean, we traveled together and he stood up in my wedding. I want to respond with this, but I'm concerned that he will shut off all communication with me, and I don't want that. If he gets together with the woman he's interested in, that's fine. But since moving back here 10 years ago, I've wanted to reconnect. I'm hurt by what he said. I know this seems small compared to a lot of the posts in this sub, but it feels significant to me. What can I say? TLDR, I texted an old friend and got rejected. Today I fucked up by forgetting my AirPods were connected during an important Zoom meeting. So this happened earlier today, and I still want to crawl into a hole. I work remotely, and we had a big Zoom meeting with several higher-ups in attendance. I was just listening in, so I muted myself and decided to grab a quick snack from the kitchen. My AirPods were in, and I was still connected to the meeting while I rummaged through my cabinets. Now, my dog has this habit of sneaking into the kitchen whenever I open a bag of chips. So as soon as I ripped open a bag, I whispered, "You sneaky little bastard, I see you." Except I wasn't whispering to myself. I was still connected to the meeting. I didn't realize anything was wrong until I heard dead silence, followed by my manager saying, "Who are you talking to?" At this point, I froze. I checked my screen, and sure enough, the little green microphone icon was on. I panicked and blurted out, my dog." Cue awkward laughter from a few people, but I could tell some of the higher-ups were not amused. One of them dryly said, "Let's try to keep the side conversations to a minimum." The worst part? The meeting was being recorded for future reference. So now my little outburst is officially immortalized in company history. TLDR forgot my AirPods were connected, called my dog a sneaky bastard during an important Zoom meeting, and now it's recorded forever. Today I fucked up by accidentally peeing all over my sister's bathroom. So this happened yesterday, around 200 a.m. I just Ubered home and was blackout drunk. I live with my sister, and we have separate bathrooms. Mine is downstairs and hers is across her room and just down the hall from my room. My drunk ass thought it would be a good idea to use hers because I was too lazy to go downstairs when I already laid down in my bed. I waddled over to the bathroom and without even turning on the light, pissed all over the place, trying to aim for the toilet that I couldn't see. I ended up ruining some of her makeup products and soaking up her bathroom mat with pee. In the morning, she woke up to a disgusting stale pee smell all over the bathroom. She woke me up and dragged me to the bathroom to show me what I did. I was so hungover and confused, I just stood flabbergasted and embarrassed. Obviously, I cleaned the entire bathroom and paid her back for the makeup products, plus a little extra as a way of showing my regret. She was pretty chill about it, despite the major inconvenience though. TLDR got too drunk and pissed all over my sister's bathroom, ruining her makeup products and bathroom mat. Today I fucked up by accidentally calling my English teacher old. In my English class, my teacher had started asking about Gen Z slang, which I won't lie, got a laugh out of all of us. Here's where I messed up. He started asking about millennials and other generations like that. He was wondering what generation he was, and then he said, "I think I'm a millennial." I said no, probably not a millennial is early 40s, late 30s, which he responded with, "How old do you think I am?" in a laughy tone. But the embarrassment and regret had already creeped in, and at that point I was laughing, but also wished the floor would swallow me whole. And when I left class, my friends made fun of me for it, while I was laughing through my embarrassment. And now when I think of that moment, I cringe and get that sense of second and first-hand embarrassment. TLDR, I called my English teacher old in the middle of class. Today I fucked up by pulling an elastic battle rope too hard and almost blinding myself. So this happened today, and my face still hurts. I was at the gym, feeling good, ready to get in a solid workout. I decided to switch things up and use those elastic battle ropes, like the normal heavy ropes, but stretchy. I figured they'd give me a killer resistance workout while making me look like a beast. Spoiler, I did not look like a beast. I started off with some standard waves, but then my dumbass thought, hey, what happens if I pull harder? So I did. I yanked the rope back with full force, stretching it to what I can only assume was its absolute limit. And then physics happened. The rope snapped back at the speed of light and whipped me directly in the face. I swear I saw my ancestors for a second. The impact landed less than a centimeter from my eye right on my cheekbone. If it had been just a little higher, I might be writing this with one eye. I stumbled back, clutching my face, half expecting to see blood. Thankfully, it was just an angry red mark and some swelling. But the best part, there were at least 5 people who saw the whole thing. A couple of them gasped, one guy actually laughed out loud, and the gym staff just stared at me like, this idiot really almost took himself out with a rubber rope. Now I'm sitting at home, icing my face, reflecting on my life choices. Moral of the story, elastic battle ropes fight back. TLDR pulled an elastic battle rope too hard, got slapped in the face at Mark 10, almost lost an eye, and got publicly humiliated in the gym. Today I fucked up by not realizing a customer had bags. So looking back on it, this was actually really stupid that I was worried about this, but I was just kinda stressed, I guess. Some relevant information: I work AA at a grocery store. I'm 15, so this is my first job, and I started it in January. I have been sick for about the past 2 weeks, and I live in a pretty small town, which is why this situation really stressed me out. It all started when I was up at the till, and I wasn't supposed to leave, because everyone else was bus busy, putting out all the freight that had just gotten there, but I hadn't had any customers in a while, and my ear piercing was kind of itchy. So I took out my earring to properly scratch it. But before I had a chance to put it back in, a customer approached. So I figured I would just set my earring down on the cash register while I rang the customer through, and when I was done, I'd put the earring back in. Well, as I finished ringing her through and bagging her items, since I was the only person at the till, yet another customer approached, and it kept on going on like that for about 5 customers until eventually I got to this old lady, who had only 3 to 4 small items. This part is important, and there was no other customers in sight, so I figured I'd quickly ring her through and get my earring back in. Well, in my distracted and sleepy state, I neglected to realize that she had brought bags with her. So the moment that I was done ringing her through, I turned my back to her to grab my earring and swiftly put it back in. After that, I quickly turned back to see her placing her own items in her bag, and I instantly recognized my mistake. Now, obviously, apart from the fact that I just should have bagged her groceries because it is part of my job and I obviously made a mistake here, there is nothing that old people hate more than bagging their own groceries. But before I could even apologize or think of what to say, she said, "Aren't you supposed to be doing this?" And I wasn't really sure what to say, but I was just like, "Oh yeah, I should have. I'm sorry." Because what else do I say? I messed up and I can learn from that. But I'm not gonna take all her groceries out of the bag. So I could rebag them, and she was like, "Well, you won't have a job for much longer," and walked away. And I know this was probably dumb of me, but I got really scared that she actually had the connections to get me fired or something. But I know I messed up, but I feel like I don't deserve to get fired over it. I felt really bad for not bagging her groceries. But I think everyone makes mistakes sometimes. I won't lie, at the time I did start crying a bit because I've had 1 or 2 rude customers. But normally they're not mad because I actually did anything wrong. So this was kinda different. TLDR. I didn't realize that an old lady had wanted me to bag her 3 or 4 items because I was distracted and she told me she would get me fired. Today I fucked up by taking Adderall instead of Prozac. Without getting too into it, I've had a history of mental health problems since childhood. I tried a number of different medications as a teenager, but ended up disliking the side effects and stopping use altogether by the time I was 18. Now, at 23, I've been in therapy for a few years and decided with the help of my therapist to try it again. This is where the problems start. A few months back, I see a sort of shady Zoom psychiatrist. She diagnoses me with ADHD within a 20-minute conversation with no diagnostic test and prescribes me Adderall. I've previously suspected I've had ADHD, so I went with it. I tried taking it for a while, but have a lot of anxiety OCD issues that it exacerbated, so I stopped. I didn't throw it away or anything, just threw it in my cupboard and forgot about it. The capsules were green and white. A few weeks later, I decide to give meds another go, but with a different psychiatrist. This one seems a lot more like an actual doctor. Decides on starting me on Prozac for my OCD symptoms. I pick the meds up from my pharmacy. They're also green and white capsules, just slightly smaller. I get a weekly pill organizer to keep track of my meds. And on week 2, I grab my meds from my cupboard and load it for the week. I'm not noticing anything too different on Prozac, but it isn't supposed to kick in for 3-6 weeks, so I'm not that worried. Sometimes I forget to take it until later in the day, like 7 p.m. I'm having my normal anxiety symptoms, but sometimes struggling to sleep far beyond my usual insomnia. I'm not hungry, my mouth is weirdly dry, and my hands shake on occasion, but I attribute it to not eating. Today, I go to load my medication into my pill organizer for the 3rd week, and I notice they look different. I read the label, but it says Prozac. It's definitely the right pills. Suddenly, I remember the Adderall also in my cupboard. Upon investigation, I've been taking Adderall for at least the past week. Now I have to restart weaning myself onto Prozac. I have no idea if it's helpful or not. And I've been unknowingly on Adderall for hopefully 1 week. Maybe 2. All because I couldn't keep track of my pill bottles. Plus, at my month-out appointment, I'll have to explain I've actually only been taking it for 2 weeks. I feel like such an idiot. TLDR, I had an old Adderall prescription that looks very similar to Prozac. Ended up taking Adderall instead of Prozac for at least a week.